Hello everybody and welcome back to Pravus Gaming and more Tekkit. In the last video, we started to experiment with the Applied Energistics mod, which allows us to digitize all of our leftover stuff and shove it into a mass energy conversion network, namely on some sort of a hard drive in these ME drives. And from those storage spaces, we can access all of our items with the Access Terminal and even craft directly from storage using the crafting terminal. And we thought, hey, this is amazing. This is all hunky-dory. It'll save me a ton of space. It's all convenient in one nice little location. It's great. However, we can go one step further with automatic crafting. The way that this is going to work, basically, is we can plug recipes into our network and tell it how to craft all of the tedious items so we never have to do it again. Think about all those conduits that I've had to make, or wiring and cables, or, I don't know, furnaces and buckets and all these tedious things that we don't ever have to want to worry about again. This thing can do it all for us. There's a couple of items we're going to need a lot of, and that is the ME Assembler Containment Walls, which is made of gold, so it's starting to get a little expensive, and some Certus quartz and some iron. We also will need a fair number of ME heat vents. This requires iron, iron bars, and ME cables. And what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a giant multi-block structure. Now, this is not that different from what we did with the Big Reactors mod. We are going to start by creating a frame out of our containment walls, and we're going to fill it with a bunch of these heat vents. Okay, there's our giant cage right there. Now we gotta fill this with some stuff, right? A few different things that we can fill it with. Two different items, actually. First, we have the crafting CPUs. And what this effectively does is allow us to craft multiple items automatically at a time. Think of several different little assembly lines all working for you. That requires an advanced processor, some Certus quartz, glowstone dust, and some iron ingots. The other item we're going to need is the ME Pattern Provider. If we look at this thing, you can see it uses a couple of conversion matrices, an advanced processor, another storage cell, some iron, and a crafting table. This is kind of like your storage space for crafting recipes. It doesn't know how to just make everything. You have to program this sucker to know how to make items for you. But the more of these you have, the more recipes it can memorize. But of course, the more ME crafting CPUs you have, the more it can craft at the same time. Really, I think that considering the size of this multi-block structure, and you can make it really massive if you want to, I think I'm going to go ahead and fill it with like 9 CPUs and another 18 or so pattern providers. That's probably overkill. We could get away with something far smaller than this. But that's what I'm going to go for. Okay, that should be enough. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Doop-a-doo-doo, doop-a-doo. Oop, didn't mean to do that, doop. Ah, didn't mean to do that either. Hold down shift. Doop-a-doop-doop. And where's my... There they are. Crafting CPUs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we have to just fill this thing with some vents like so. And ba-boom! We now have a giant ME crafting system. Now, if we right-click on this thing right here, you can see a whole bunch of blank spaces. We got no patterns in here at all. But I have a lot of pages for potential patterns, an outrageous number, in fact, actually. Maybe I didn't need this much storage space. This might have been ridiculous. But anyway, what do we need? We need patterns. Now, how do you program the thing? Well, we are going to need something called an ME pattern encoder, which if we look up right here, there, or is it provider? No, there we go, encoder. Yes, there it is. Okay, so for that, we need a whole bunch of iron, crafting table, and another one of those stupid conversion matrix. You know, I'm so glad that we don't have to do this using BC Silicon and using stupid chipsets, because man, that does take a while and it does take a lot of power. This is far more efficient. So I'm glad they updated that mod. You know, there is actually an Applied Energistics mod, the second version of it, Applied Energistics 2, does exist. It's not in this mod pack, but it does exist. And boy, howdy, would I like to play with the second version of Applied Energistics, because man, does it add a lot of fun features. Oh well, that's not today, though. So there's our ME pattern encoder, and I'm going to come over here and just place it right down here. So I don't even think this requires any power, but even so, let's just keep it next to the network. So we need to encode some patterns and create crafting recipes. The way to do that is to create more disks of ME blank patterns. Now these require Certus quartz, glass, glowstone, and iron. I'm actually going to make a whole bunch of these because I'm pretty sure we're going to go through all of them. Like 64 or so should be good. You can never have too many blank patterns. All right, let's go ahead and grab a bit of cobblestone just to illustrate or something. I don't know. So if we place down a blank pattern right here, okay? this is where we are going to encode with a recipe. I'm going to take the cobblestone, and I'm going to create the recipe for a furnace. All I have to do now is encode it, and boom. We now have a pattern that specifically is designed to craft furnaces using cobblestone. You can see right here in the description, crafts 1 furnace with 8 cobblestone. Perfect. Now, if I go into our giant storage database thing, I don't know what you want to call it, and place this pattern in here, there we go. We now have a recipe to make furnaces, and it actually shows you the item right here. Now, if I were to hook this sucker up to our networking system, I could actually order furnaces and it will craft them for me. But I need to actually hook this thing up to our house first. So I'm going to go ahead and start digging some tunnels and route this thing back up into our house. Okay, there we go. Now, as a general rule, you really don't want to be doing what I'm doing with long strands of ME cable. I mean, it's convenient for the sake of my base and looking, aesthetically pleasing, but every, 10 lengths, I think, of ME cable does increase the amount of power you are consuming by 1 energy unit per tick. So, yeah, having everything closer to that giant brain is probably better, and if I was smart, I would have thought about putting it in the basement. But I needed to make more space, so we didn't do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and take all of our current network and hook it back up over in that direction. Now, I did create a tool here, by the way. It's called the quartz wrench. Figured it wasn't really worth showing you, but it's just a couple of nether quartz, basically, and a little X pattern. It's useful for a few different things. You can use it to, remove it just like you would the crescent hammer for thermal expansion. Same exact concept, which obviously means it is quite useful. So I'm going to go ahead and pick all this stuff up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and stick my access terminal right here and my crafting terminal right here, so those should be hooked up to the network. And then what I think I'm going to do is actually leave my ME controller and a few other little items, the ME drive and so on, right in here inside of this room. And one thing that's convenient about my placement is if I do want to expand out to the reactor room and add in a giant turbine, I actually can hook the reactor directly up to this thing to power it, and I think that's going to be far more convenient. But that's out of the scope for today's episode. Let's instead place the ME controller, let's say, right over... we'll place it right over here, I guess. And the hard drive will get applied right over here. Okay, now I just need to power this thing using the energy cell I had before. Again, we'll hook it up another time. And you do indeed already have the power we're looking for. So now we should all have to do is hook up a couple of cables, and just like that, the entire thing should be hooked up into the network. Yep, you can see my access terminal and my crafting terminal over here. Perfect. Let's dump in our storage devices. And I'm going to go all the way back home real quick, and we want to test this thing out and see if we can actually craft anything. So I have no furnaces currently inside of our storage, right? But if I want to get a furnace, I should be able to click on this and say create 1. And there we go. It just created 1 furnace using up the cobblestone I already had inside. Look how convenient that is. Now, really, the sky is the limit as far as what these recipes can do, especially with simple craftable items from a crafting bench. For example, let's suppose rather than have to make a new set of hardstone energy conduits every time that I want to route some power, we just have this thing craft them for me. Very easy to do. First thing, of course, all we have to do is remind ourselves, what is the recipe for a leadstone energy conduit? That is just lead ingots, glass, plus some redstone. So I'm just going to remove some glass from the system, a bit of redstone, some of my lead. We're going to place the lead like so, bit of glass, redstone, redstone. Of course, it's not actually using any of the items. All we're doing is just creating the pattern. I'm going to encode this, and this would create 6 leadstone energy conduits. Da-doop. All right, we're going to go ahead and take that thing. And then the next thing we want, if we want to upgrade to the next tier, would be the hardened energy conduits, which requires Invar plus more redstone plus the leadstone. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a bit of, there it is, Invar right here. Let's clear that out of the way. And then Invar, actually I need some of the conduits themselves. Hang on. I'll just go ahead and cheat that in right now because I'm just going to delete it immediately afterwards. Pattern, 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 and then let's redstone, redstone, redstone. That would create our hardened energy conduits. We can go ahead and dump that. I'm going to encode this thing. And there we go. ME encoded patterns. Perfect. Let's dump our resources back into the system. And then go back down to the brain and plug in the recipes. Doop and doop. Okay, we can see all of that is there. Now, if doors are a little bit hard when I run this fast, if I were to go to my access panel, I can start crafting as much hardened energy stuff as we want, and it should be smart enough. Actually, hang on, let me just retrieve all this real quick. It should be smart enough to know that it needs to craft leadstone energy conduits first and then craft the hardened energy. So if I say that I want to make, let's say a whole stack. Is a stack good enough? Yeah, let's say a stack. And begin. It should automatically craft, you can see it happening right there, the leadstone, and then it's creating the hardened energy cell conduits. That is such a nice feature. Now, for long, complicated recipes, when you want to make sure that your system is actually processing correctly and making everything it's supposed to, let's suppose that we wanted to have some way of monitoring the crafting. There is a way to do that. There it is, the crafting monitor, right there. If I choose the recipe, we can see that requires glass, iron, an ME cable, and another basic processor. And if I hook this thing up right here, that adds another block into the terminal. This would allow us to actually see what the brain is currently crafting. So if we think it's getting stuck on something or it can't find the resources, this would be one way to find out, hey, what's the deal? Why aren't we making any progress? Well, there it is, right there. Super nice. Now, we can do the same thing with a storage monitor, which again requires glass, iron, ME cable, but also this thing called an ME level emitter, which I don't know if I'll get into right now, but basically it attaches to your ME cables and it produces a redstone signal when a certain condition has been met. That requires a basic processor, redstone torch, iron, and an ME cable. Now, the storage monitor is quite different from the crafting monitor. Instead of showing a process, it shows how much of a particular item you have in store without actually having to use the access terminal. For example, if I place this down right here, it's just a blank monitor. But if I were to assign it, let's say cobblestone, by right-clicking with this cobblestone, you can see right there it actually has a nice little screen that shows exactly how much cobblestone I have available. Now, of course, if I were to right-click with a different item, it changes what we're storing a little bit, or what we're showing. So I want to make sure I lock this using the quartz wrench. I'm going to simply right-click. Oh, nope, that's not right. I want to shift right-click. Yep, there we go. And now it is locked. So it is always going to be there until I choose to unlock it. A whole wall of these is a very quick, easy way to tell how much of a particular resource you have stored. So that's the very basics of storage and crafting and just kind of ways to access your crafting terminal and your storage. Now, you might be asking, what about some of the more nuanced crafting recipes? For example, let's suppose that I wanted to make a bunch of these basic processor assemblies automatically, right? Is it smart enough to know how to create an item using one of those reusable items like a quartz cutting knife? And the answer to that is going to be yes. But it gets a little bit more complicated when you have something like, let's say, silicon, which does require some refining in order to even have it in the first place. I mean, yes, I could craft up a whole bunch of silicon myself, right? Put in the Certus quartz dust, let that smelt up, dump it in, and then it could make the items for me. True. Or what if we want to add a step into our recipe process where it knows to take the Certus quartz dust, dump it into a furnace, smelt it, retrieve it, and then automatically craft the next recipe with it? That is all completely doable with applied energistics. Let's start very simply. I'm going to put in some quartz dust to my pattern encoder right here, and it doesn't show that there is any recipe that can occur just by crafting Certus quartz, and that is certainly true. However, if I were to then put silicon right here, we can force it to encode saying that quartz dust turns into silicon, like so. Now, of course, we know that there is an extra step required in turning dust into silicon, but our applied energistics system doesn't quite understand that yet. We need to spell it out for them. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and put some conduits back here with our redstone energy cell. We're going to place down a redstone furnace, and we're going to tell it how to bake dust into silicon. So what I'm going to do is create an import bus, an export bus, and an ME interface. Now, an ME interface requires another one of those conversion matrices, plus ME cable, plus iron, plus glass. And what we should be able to do then is place this guy right up here, I guess. I think this is going to work. I think so. Yeah, and then we should be able to hook this thing up to our network. Now, right here with this ME interface, by right-clicking, you can see an export config and exported items, and most importantly, processing. What we can do right here is dump the ME encoded pattern right there. And now the system thinks it understands that all it should have to do is take dust, dump it into whatever block is attached to the ME interface, and somehow, silicon is going to pop out. It just sort of takes it at faith there. Now, we need to actually remove the silicon from the redstone furnace when it is cooked, and this is where the buses come in. So there's two types. It's the import bus and the export bus. Whoops, that is not what I wanted. I want to see the recipe. There we go. The import bus requires an ME interface, a sticky piston, some iron, and an ME cable. The export bus requires iron, another ME interface, a regular piston, not a sticky piston, and ME cable. Now, I don't think we actually need the import bus right now. I think we can get away with just doing the export bus. So if I place right here, is that what I wanted? Hang on. Place the quartz wrench and rotate. Maybe this is the wrong one. Do we want the import bus? Hang on, it might be the import bus. I may have them backwards. I mix these two up all the time. Place? Nope. Place? Okay, that might actually be it. There we go. All right, and we're going to hook this sucker back up, okay? So now it should output silicon and dump it back into the system, which of course is already networked up to the brain. So there we go. We have all of that. Now, I think if I have this set up, and I might have missed a step, but if I have this set up correctly, we should be able to go to the ME interface right here. And I want to have silicon. Perfect. So I'm going to say let's craft, I don't know, 10. Okay? That might be a little bit overdone, but it's fine. I'm going to head back down there real quick. We should be able to see it still in action, since I made a few of them. And over here. Is it smart enough? You can see it lit up. So yes, indeed, it took out 10 quartz dust, dumped it into the redstone furnace, creates the silicon, and you can see it light up here as it removes the item and dumps it back into the system. So we have our silicon. Perfect. So now we wanted to create a recipe that actually makes the basic processor assemblies, right? So let's go ahead and withdraw a little bit of gold, a little bit of redstone. I'm going to need this quartz cutting knife once again. Let's go to the pattern encoder. Clear this thing out. Redstone, redstone, gold, silicon, and a quartz cutting knife. And we should be able to encode it. There's the item right there. There's the recipe. We'll go dump it back in. And there's the item, a basic processor assembly. We're going to go ahead and tell it to craft one of these. Oh no, it hasn't crafted. Why? Well, if you check the crafting monitor right here, you can see that it actually says it is missing the materials. So all I should have to do now is dump my quartz cutting knife back in, and it should automatically use it to create the basic processor assembly. Perfect. Now, of course, a basic processor assembly by itself doesn't do me a whole lot of good, so we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're going to dump in the assembly into the recipe there, tell it specifically that this does create the basic processor, and we are going to encode it. Then we're going to go back down to our ME interface with the redstone furnace, and we're going to put in a second recipe right there. And just as before, it should automatically say, well, I guess if we put this in a furnace, the assembly becomes a processor. And you've got this all hooked up. Now let's suppose we wanted to always have a certain number of processors available, so I don't have to click the button and then wait for it to smelt them. You know, let's say I want to always have 16 ME basic processors in my system at any given time. We can do that. This is where the level emitter becomes very useful. We're going to set this thing up right over here, and we should be able to rotate it around, I think, to face this like so. And if we click on our ME interface, it should be able to automatically detect items in our ME network. So I think what we can do is place the item right here, basic processor, and say we always want to have 16 in here. And if so, if the, let's see, emit when levels are above or equal to that limit. No, if the levels are below 16, I want to emit a redstone signal to the furnace. So now it is automatically turned on. Does this thing start crafting automatically? Wait a minute. Maybe I've got this slightly off. Sorry, yes, I do have this slightly wrong. Okay, I've rearranged this a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to hook up our basic export bus. Now, what this will do, if I want to place down a processor assembly, is if I place it in here, what it's going to do is automatically pull a processor out of the system and dump it into the input of the redstone furnace, which is how I have a basic processor right here. By accident. Didn't quite mean to do that. We don't want it to always be pulling our processors out and immediately crafting them. I mean, we could do that, but maybe I don't care. Maybe instead what I'd like to do is attach an ME level emitter to emit a redstone signal to tell it when to pull an item out and when not to. Hang on, we're going to rotate this sucker around like so. Okay. And I'm going to say... Well, I thought there was a way to, hang on, I thought there was a way to control this export bus a little bit more. Maybe we need something a bit more complicated Actually, I think they may have actually changed this a little bit since I last played. Maybe we actually do need to make a precision export bus. That might be what we need. Okay, tell you what, we just made a processor. Let me grab this real quick and we'll go make that. Aha! That looks a lot better. Okay, now we actually have some items. Okay, so what we want to do is first off, make sure that our level emitter is set to emit a redstone when levels are below or equal to a limit. So it does, if we have less than 16 processors, it creates a redstone signal. And I want this thing to pull out processor assemblies only when redstone is active. So if we click on this, active with a signal, and then I'm going to place the processor assembly right here. Okay. So what should be happening right now is... Does it do this automatically? Hang on. I don't know if it actually queries the system to create 16 of these right away or not. Maybe it does? Well, regardless, let me test something real quick. If I then were to go and create... There we go. If I were to go and tell this thing... Actually, just create another access terminal in there. That would be smart. Oh, wow. Oh, we already had a bunch. Okay. Well, anyway, let's tell this thing I want to craft 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those things. It should automatically have them. Oh, look, you can see they just all just disappeared. Okay, so they all just got pulled in to our system. Hang on. I can't quite run as fast as I used to. They all just got pulled out of the system because this thing had less than 16, and it just put the basic processor assemblies directly into the redstone furnace. Now that we have more than 16, you can see that this signal has turned off, which means it should not pull any more basic processors assemblies if we had any more in the system. So if I place one more basic processor assembly in here, it should not automatically pull it out and turn it into a basic processor. You can see it is stuck right there. But if I were to pull out, let's say, half of these, like so, it put out a redstone signal. It's going to pull out as many as it can, dump it in, and then dump them back into the system. Hopefully this gives you guys some idea as to the convenience of the applied energistic system. It takes a little while to get it going, but if you're willing to invest in all the right recipes and hook up the correct machines, you don't even need a giant automated factory, like we did in Tekkit Classic, to produce all of your items. All you need to do is hook up the correct machinery to applied energistics, go to a single block, say, hey, I would like one of these, please, and it makes a whole bunch for you. It's super convenient, it's amazing, we love it. Speaking of loving it, I wonder who else is loving it right about now. Oh, it would appear we have a whole bunch of hungry customers. Don't you worry, Julio and Giovanni, I'll get the goods. Don't you worry. But how did you get in here? Very quietly. Can't let anyone know this guy found my secret livestock stash. Phew! I did warn that all non-employees and employees who went beyond the management area would be terminated. And the cool thing is, because of the sound muffler, no one can hear him scream. Okay, Julio and Giovanni, I can't be bothered creating an ordering system, so I'm just going to toss all the food through and trust that you guys can figure it all out for yourselves. Go get them! Ah, the sounds of a successful restaurant. The buzz of a happy clientele, conversing amongst each other, sharing relationships and family, and good food, as they try to shove the food down to their gullet, retch, vomit into a bucket, then eat their own vomit, and cry quietly to themselves. And most importantly, the gold is flowing into my pocket. Everything is going exactly as planned. You know, I think we might be on to something with Pravus. Maybe if I can become successful enough here, I can take this international, become a super conglomerate, and a very famous billionaire. And then I can invest in all sorts of crazy pet projects. I'll be like the next Elon Musk or Richard Branson and build my own space fleet. That'll happen someday. But not yet. Baby steps. For now, I'm quite happy with my applied energistic system. I have a lot of plans as far as what we can do to automate a lot of our crafting and simplify our lives quite a bit. But of course, this thing does require an absolute ton of power. You can already see it's gone through a few million redstone energy units in a relatively short amount of time. So we are going to have to invest, I think, in the next video, to our big reactor, make it a heck of a lot bigger, and maybe even throw in a giant turbine, and then hook that thing up directly. And that'll fund our applied energistic system for eons to come. And then after that, maybe, just maybe, I will hit it big, and we can start building our own space armada and colonize the stars. Maybe. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If so, then I ask that you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.